basically saying that your goal should be a healthier lifestyle than just seeing like the scale go down.
Yeah. Cause like, I mean, if anybody was to say, hey, I need to drop 30 pounds, I got you, man. I could get you to drop 30 pounds real quick. It's not going to be fun. You're going to feel like crap, but here you go. But if you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get healthier, I can give you some really sound advice on how to be healthier, as opposed to just, I need to watch the scale. The scale really doesn't, I don't know. For me, it really doesn't mean much, unless you're in a sport where you do need to cut weight or meet a certain class or something. But the scale really isn't that important, day to day.
Right. Like a lot of times I'll see people on Instagram to post a picture of them heavier like now than they were before. Like they'll put a weight at the bottom of like what they were and what they are now. They're heavier, but they look better. And so like, again, to your point, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna look better just because you lose weight, which goes back to that macronutrient aspect of it. Like you can drop pounds, like literal weight, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your body is gonna change for the best when that happens.
Yeah. Just I guess what we're discussing then is it's more of the short term versus long term. Like, I guess when you're putting your goals together, when people are putting their goals together, they need to really decide what it is that they're trying to do. Some people do have the short term goal. Hey, I just need to get under this weight for this thing. Right. Whether it's a photo shoot or a wedding or or they're actually getting ready for a powerlifting thing or bodybuilding. So short term is, it's really important. But then, long term, if you're just talking about, hey, I went to the doctor and he says, I need to be healthier and I'm trying to make good decisions, then you need to think of more sustainable ways, to get there.
Yeah. It's the reason that weight is such a big issue and why people focus on it is it gives you instant gratification, right? Like you see the weight drop, you immediately feel good about yourself. It's hard to quantify health as a, it's like, well, what is healthy? Unless you're, unless you have like cholesterol issues or something and you're like, you watching the numbers go down, that's different. But again, it's associated with numbers. So we're so focused on numbers, like we like to see the numbers move one way or another. And
how much do you weigh? How much do you bench? How
Right.
often do you work out? How many meals do you eat?
Yeah, it's funny that you like how much, and I'm sure a lot of people that watching this and can relate, people that lift. Number one question is like, how much do you bench, right? Like everyone gets that. If you lift weights or you look like you lift weights, usually for men, the first question that is asked is how much do you bench? I get
that one gets on my last nerve so much too. So, in my job, I'm a manager. And so I do interviews. Mm-hmm. Dude, I'll interview somebody for a job, and we won't talk about, we'll talk about the job. Right. Yeah. And I'm sitting across from them. I just finished, hour-long interview. And I go, hey, so do you have any questions that I can answer about the job? And they'll be like, yeah, bro, how much do you bench? And I'm like, hey, like, come on,
that's not
man.
about the job.
Like,
you're fine. We're not hiring you.
Yeah, like, dude, right? For real?
Crazy. Yeah. And it's like, I get irritated, not because they asked me a question like that. I welcome that. It's, can you make your question like more legitimate? What is knowing how much I bench, which I don't even know how much, I bench, but
I don't have an answer either. I don't know.
What is that going to do for you? That's not going to do anything for you. Like ask me, ask me my routine, ask me, what I eat, ask me like a more legitimate question that I can, that I need to think about to answer, not the superficial stuff,
Yeah. That's one that I think everybody knows too well. It's just, the how much do you bench? So I'm assuming so later you can go, hey, I met this guy. He can bench 300 pounds. And, it's okay.
You just start making up numbers.
Like, yeah. I bench 800 pounds. Yeah. On a regular basis. Yep. Go tell your friends.
For reps. Yeah. For reps. With blood, like with those cups, like around your arms.
Yeah. With the bands too. Yeah. because yeah, that I think the interest is obviously, you know, people, you know, they always, I guess, on Facebook, Instagram, you see somebody benching a lot of weight,
Yeah.
but how much you bench has nothing to do with, you know, yeah, your diet, how much weight you lose, the aesthetic. You know, you can bench a lot of weight and your chest can look, you know, not that great.
Yeah.
And also vice versa. But yeah, it's just, it's
Well,
pretty funny, man.
yeah, well, you look at a lot of power lifters, you know, to that point that you mentioned, a lot of them, their goal is not to look a certain way. Their goal is to move as much weight as possible.
Mm-hmm.
They're still moving
Yep.
weight. So, but they don't, you know, they don't look like bodybuilders. Or if you walk across them, majority of them, you know, people wouldn't think they're fit people. But, you know, so
Yep.
and I'm trying to say this in such a way where I'm not offending powerlifters. That, you know, there's definitely powerlifters that are that look great and everything, but
Right.
the general look of a powerlifter is just a massive guy, not particularly lean, and just power, you know, move the weight. That's the goal. So, you know, weight is not the, you know, is not the all deciding factor of all that. So
Yeah. Like, I think a better question would be, is, you know, like, what's your training style? You know, because
right.
I could be a CrossFitter, or I could be a power lifter. Shoot, I could be doing, you know, Pilates. Like, you know, it's just a, you know, that'd be a better question than, you know, to find out what somebody does,
Mm-hmm.
you know, rather than just how much they bench.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was gonna skip the Q&A because I put up the post kind of late. We didn't get much. I ended up getting one right before we got on, and we actually answered it in the show. It was about like, what do you think about macros? But I think we kind of covered it pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
So, and you had one as well, I believe. So let's just go ahead and get
Yeah.
into it.
So, like, yeah, from the last one, I guess because of the cut of the shirt that I had, somebody was like, "Hey, man, how do I get big traps?" You know, somebody messaged me. I thought it was pretty funny, but it is a legitimate question. I think the biggest mistake that I see with traps, or at least folks who are legitimately trying to have, you know, that larger look to their traps, is too many shrugs. I don't think really loading up a bar and doing shrugs is how you get there. I saw the biggest difference in traps and my shoulders from actually doing more raises and more reps than any weightlifting or anything like that. So if someone is training and, you know, you're used to doing either dumbbell shrugs or barbell, those are still good to get some blood in there, right? You know, I would recommend not loading up the bar and trying to do more than 20 reps a set. But you'll get a lot more out of focusing on your traps when you're doing your side raises, or even your front raises, and even squeezing your traps when you're doing like rear delts, coming this way. You can, like, there's two ways to work out. Like, you can either, you know, just kind of move weight willy-nilly around, but you can actually turn, you know, any exercise into a focus onto a specific muscle group. So even doing a shoulder raise, which is probably mainly for the delt, you can turn that just from focus into a trap workout, by rolling your shoulders back and coming back a little bit, and you're going to feel that raise up over here. Those exercises, lots of reps, you'll get a lot more out of than just let's see how many plates I can throw on this bar and you know, do this 2-inch movement. It doesn't really work that well.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit to unpack there. So genetically, I've kind of had like bigger shoulders, not necessarily, you know, traps, but just bigger shoulders, that area in general. And the way I've always trained was I've focused on raises. And that, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I do a lot of raises, front raises, side raises. And I know that saying you need to have mind muscle connection sometimes can kind of sound a little corny and people don't really believe it, but
Yep.
there is something to that, right? Like when you concentrate on a particular muscle group, you seem to get better, you know, a better workout. So whenever I would do raises, I would think of my arm, like the lower half of my arm from the elbow down, as just a way to hold the weight. Don't focus on that. Don't strain your arm. Don't strain your grip,
Yep.
and just use just the shoulder and to raise it up and down. Doesn't matter, how this part of the arm looks, like, if it's flaying, it doesn't matter. This is the part that need to focus on. So when I did them, I always concentrated on that, and I've always had like great success with that. Now, I say I have good genetics with shoulders. Was it from good genetics, or was it from good training? Maybe a combination of both. Hard to say. I've been training for a long
Yep.
time, so I definitely give that a try for the shoulders. As far as traps are concerned, yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a point where putting on a lot of weight and moving it,
Yeah,
big,
just
doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Yeah.
yeah.
So people will point to Dorian Yates' style of training, which he did. He did heavy weights and not a ton of reps. But you got to think, even with not a ton of reps, he still did like full sets. Like it wasn't like Dorian just
Yeah.
you did a couple of reps, and then you're kind of moving into that powerlifting scene. And that's not, if you're trying to grow, that's not what you want to be. Not what you want to do. So.
Yeah, and the traps work in a lot of more exercises than you think, right? I think typically, if immediately you ask somebody about traps, or say, oh yeah, let's go do strugs, and it's like, well, you can actually get a lot out of your traps from rows, from deadlift, obviously, even just the motion of when you come up, if you can squeeze at the top,
Right.
that small motion while holding the bar for. And you got to do more than 5 reps, right? You got to be doing reps to get this stuff to work. Yeah, that you're going to get something out of that. Same thing with actually pull downs. So, pull downs, usually you're thinking just, okay, I'm working my lat right now. But actually at that bottom squeeze, when you're coming back and your elbows start pointing not to the ground, but a little bit back, you're going to be getting trap work out of that too. So they're really involved in a lot more exercises than just, shrugs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's tough. It's tough when you have a stubborn body part. Like we all have them. Everyone has a body part that they would like to get, more developed, that is just hard to do. But you have to find ways to see what you can do, and if you find something that you see improvement, stick with it. That's kind of my advice. So, and the other thing I was going to say is, generally speaking, the guys that have, like, let's say like you don't have very good biceps, right? And you see a guy that has great biceps, don't always follow what he says to do, because that guy might have had great biceps just genetically. He might have not had to work for it. For you, that, it might, what he does might not work for